There are moments when everything you have built, your career, your identity, your sense of control, suddenly goes quiet. And in that silence, you are forced to meet yourself without titles, without armor. And tonight's conversation, dear listeners, lives right there. I mean, in the space where pressure, purpose, and humanity collide. So, hey, dear listeners, welcome back to another powerful episode of Mind Meets Machine, where we explore how human resilience, leadership, and inner clarity evolve in a world shaped by pressure and performance. And today I'm joined by a lovely guest. Please welcome Kenny Stoddart. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. And dear listeners, before we delve deep into our discussion, I'll quickly love to introduce you with Kenny. So Kenny is the founder of Iron Mind Advisors and the creator of the Iron Mind mentality. So we are talking about the courage, surrender, and what happens when life disrupts even the strongest minds, and how that disruption can become a new form of strength. So I'll not take much of your time. Let's get started. Welcome to the show again.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to talking to your audience about those topics that you just mentioned.
Amazing. So Kenny,
Mine shows like it's still recording. There you are.
I don't know what happened. Okay.
Mine
Fine.
shows that it's still recording, so we can keep going if you're good.
Perfect. I guess for me also it is actual recording in higher quality. Yeah, fine. I guess this is fine. Okay, fine. Okay. Yeah. So where I was there. Okay. Yeah. Um. Yeah. So we'll start from here.
Mm-hmm.
So Kenny, so I'm really curious while also discussing. So I'm really very curious that when you look back at the moment your life truly changed, then what do you remember feeling in your body more than anything else?
Well, I think the feeling that I felt more than anything else was the weight of what was holding me down was being lifted from me. And I truly felt that, I had a moment that I talk about quite often of that specific night when that weight was lifted. I call it the night that I received my grace in the mirror, because I had been looking for ways to get better as I was struggling through some of my darker moments. And I was I was very good at making excuses about, well, I'm doing this because of that or whatever. But on that particular evening last October, I was looking in the mirror and, I gave the problem was looking right back at me, I realized. And it was time to stop making excuses and start rebuilding myself and getting my life back on track to what I had known that I was capable of doing. So on that particular night, I gave myself what I call some grace in the mirror, meaning I gave myself a pat on the back and said, Kenny, you're going to be all right. You've got this. But the feeling that I felt after that was, that weight that I was carrying, that shame, that guilt, that person that I was not proud of, I felt that that's slowly being lifted off that evening. And it was, it's a tremendous weight that I was carrying because of the amount of pressure that I was continuing to put on myself. But when I offered myself some grace that night, it was a learning experience because of the immediate impact that it had on my healing process. I was no longer fighting against myself anymore. I was on the same page. I was on a mission to get better. And, that was the night that I decided that I was going to turn my life around. And, thus far I have done so. And it continues to be an everyday process, but now I'm in a much different environment where I'm here talking about it and sharing some of those experiences about what it felt like when I, not only was at my proverbial rock bottom, but also at the moment where my life changed forever. And I decided that, I'm in control again, not alcohol or greed or material things or promotions, that it was me that was going to lead the path through the grace of God and whatnot. And that's was a tremendous feeling to have that tremendous weight lifted off my shoulders so that I could march forward confidently on to a better process of improving myself.
Definitely, I totally agree with you. And obviously, like that awareness of the body often tells the truth before the mind catches up, right? So, yeah. So, like, one more thing, like, because when we are talking about this, I believe in all scenarios, there definitely should be some of the misconception, the common misconceptions. So, there's a widespread belief that strength means pushing through at all costs. So, from
Yeah.
your experience, where does that definition fall apart?
Well, I for years, measured strength by, how hard I could work or how fast I could run or how much I could, I was a triathlete. I was chasing all these athletic dreams. I felt like I was a big, strong man and, always trying to improve my strength. Lo and behold, the real strength that I should have been working on was the strength that comes from within, the strength to be a better person, to take better care of myself, the strength that we don't measure by crossing Ironman finish lines or getting promotions, the strength that shows up when, in times of adversity,
Yeah.
right? In times of like everybody faces adversity in their life. If they haven't, I can promise you that there will be a moment, and real strength shows up in how you deal with those moments. That's why when we look at some of our greatest leaders, during the most challenging moments, the ones that shine are the ones that turn that chaos into clarity, that adversity into strength, that cancer diagnosis into the opportunity to educate others on the
Exactly.
importance of early detection. These are things that are true signs of strength that don't show up, on the beach or in the gym, or they show up in everyday life. And those are the types of strength that we need as human beings to deal with the stuff that goes on an everyday basis that enters our life as adversity. I didn't have that strength when I was when alcohol had its control over me, for example. What I quickly realized when I got control of that problem is the clarity came back and it provided me that strength to make big decisions about my career, my livelihood, my health, my wellness, how to deal with a cancer diagnosis. These are signs of strength that come through clarity, that come through adversity, that come through using challenges that we face in our real life as an opportunity to become better. That's strength. It's not how strong you are in the gym or anything like that. That's helpful, and I love that as well. But life is much bigger than that, and that's what I've found out over the past several years.
Exactly. So what I believe is like what stand out how the strength is like in your story. I mean, it doesn't look like the dominance, but it actually look like the honesty. So I mean, that is everything. That is
It
everything.
really is, and honesty is part of that strength as well. When your strength is down, your honesty is one of those things that can diminish as well because
Yeah.
you're looking for ways to regain that strength without looking for like I said, the actual root cause. But true strength shows through during our most challenging times, and it doesn't have to be an Ironman race or a CEO promotion or a board meeting. It could be anything that we face in life that causes us adversity and allows us the opportunity to deal with it in the most meaningful way possible, and meaningful by, what's best for the total outcome for us as individuals and the people that are important for us and whatnot. And those are, you know, when you're not fully sound, those are
Hmm.
decisions that are much more difficult to make. But when you have that strength that shows through, you can make those decisions with confidence.
Very true. Very true. I really love this. Yep. And like the root causes are very important because it also help us about the deeper patterns as well. So also I'm very curious, like when I mean, what tends to happen beneath the surface when high performance avoid kind of slowing down or asking for the help.
Yeah. For high performers, which, I don't know, I guess I put myself in that category, whether I just going to put myself there. But,
Uh-huh.
I was the type of person that it looked like I had it all. It looked like everything was great on the outside. I looked strong and fit and healthy and happy and smiled big and whatnot. But, on the inside, there was a lot of years of pain and grief and whatnot that I probably hadn't dealt with in the right manner because I was continuing to try to wear that Superman cape that I refer to often, you know, making sure that I continued to look great on the outside and show no signs of weakness because that's not me. I'm strong and big and everything's great. That did come to a screeching halt for me where, I couldn't wear the cape anymore. I had to take it off and I had to ask for help. Another one of the most incredible signs of strength for someone that doesn't know how to or is asking for help or guidance. And, you know, it's stereotyped as a sign of weakness to ask for help or to
Yeah.
give in because I'm a high achiever, right? That's where I disagree with the stigmatism that, asking for help is a sign of weakness for anybody. It's actually the most amazing thing because the opportunities that are in front of us, that are right around us on a daily basis, whether it be your friends or your family or colleagues that you work with that are willing to have conversations with you, there's so much to gather from that. And it's right at our disposal. Oftentimes, we don't know what people that are sitting next to us are struggling with because they internalize everything. And I understand that component of it as well. These are personal items that everybody doesn't like to have the topic of conversation all the time. Me, I'm different. I spoke up when I was diagnosed with cancer. I needed to find help, right? So doctors were certainly a resource, but the reason, when I did speak up, I found out that other people that were much closer to me than my doctors, because I had been suffering through some of the same things and had some of the best guidance that, you know, caused me to be able to relax and have more of that clarity. But then there's also people that, that are just not willing to talk about it because it's a sensitive topic. And I understand that too. But, I'm trying to help others take that cape off and ask for help. If I didn't ask for help, I'm not quite sure where I would have ended up even now because I was on a bad path. Alcohol had got its talons and stuck them in me, and I was merciless at that point. I'm so grateful that I did ask for help and that I showed signs of weakness, and because it's actually incredible strength that I showed. And now here I am, a year and a half later, talking about this same situation and dedicating my life to helping others because of the experience that I had during my own recovery process. So I don't know if any of that would have happened had I not been a little bit more outspoken about the fact that, I struggled with alcoholism, and I'm not afraid to say that out loud because not only did I struggle with it, but I said I'm not going to do it anymore. And then I stopped doing it. And gosh, that sounds so easy, but it wasn't. None of it was easy. It's still hard every day, but with the right
Mm.
frame of mind, it's become easier and
Exactly.
easier and more of a mission. So super proud of all of that. I really am. But the work is not never over.
Exactly. And so it's not just the burnout. I mean, I would say, the identity erosion and crisis as well. So definitely. And, like the real life impact thing, which we all talk. So, what do you love to say on this? Like, how did these patterns show up in your own life? Like, um, especially at the intersection of the leadership, health, purpose. So,
So I make no secret about it that I struggled with what the executive burnout, corporate burnout, whatever it is. Alcoholism was a component of that burnout, but burnout doesn't happen overnight. It takes, it's a slow
I
decay,
know.
if you will. It takes time. And, there are early warning signs that, when I look back on it, I can definitely see them happening to me now, and I see them happening in others, and it's pretty straightforward. The issue is that no one wants, burnout's a bad word, and no one wants to talk about it. No one wants to admit
Yeah.
to it, and no one wants to point those early indicators out. Um, but the impact that it was having on my life were, the drive to continue at the same level was very difficult to keep up with. Right. So I was a young executive. I started, and rose through the ranks. And by 24 or 25 years old, I was leading big teams of multi-million-dollar revenue generating teams and forced into it and loving it and embracing it and trying to continue it. And, for the next 30 years, it was trying to continue to climb the chain. Well, maybe I should go back into the field and settle down, which is more of a grind, the day-to-day stress, or back to management and all these things, because I wanted to, be amazing. But what was happening was, my relationships were suffering. I forgot what fun essentially was. Like, it was, the things that most people look forward to, like a vacation or whatever, almost became like a challenge to coordinate and whatever. And these are things that I usually excel at. And, this is what I do. But when burnout takes over, it's hard to find the positive in a lot of things. And, a lot of it bleeds over into the house in the evenings. People see you at work and you're one person, but who you are at home is sometimes different. And those are really big indicators of burnout. And, I don't want to make it sound like people are bad people, because that's happening. These are real world things. And thankfully I addressed it, and I'm continuing to address it, because I'm an advocate for dealing with this negative stereotype of everybody needs to grind,
Yeah.
and who works the hardest instead of the smartest is going to have this perception of this. But in reality, that's not strength. That's not something that does not end well. And it didn't end well for me. So I'm not asking high achievers or executives to draw back their goals or work less or not have drive. That's not my point. Again, my point is to have boundaries around it, because there's other things in life that do matter, starting with your family, your faith, these things, but your friendships, your social life, your vacation life, your downtime, enjoying the fruits of your labor. These are the things that go by the wayside when you're grinding all the time, because you're trying to move that finish line that you've already done it, man. We're proud of you, you know, enjoy it. And then continue to work hard and do great things, but keep in mind what really matters. And, otherwise you might wake up one day and, like I did, and I was hanging on for dear life, and then I got better, and then, I had a cancer diagnosis, and then I got better. But the point is, everybody can do this. I did it at 51 years old. I went from being a cybersecurity executive
Yeah.
to a licensed mental health counselor, complete opposite spectrums of the world at 50 years old, because there are no barriers if you're thinking right.
Very, very true. Very true. And also, like, what you were saying, it feels deeply human, because success on the outside, it's kind of, I'd say, disconnection on the inside also, right? So,
There's so many people in my life that were just kind of amazed by, like, really?
yeah.
Kenny, you're always so happy. Like, you're struggling. And
Yes.
that's on me. That was because I was trying to wear that cape all the time. But the reality of it is yes, I was.
Mm.
I don't make any excuses, and I'm working through all the stuff, but I was, and I've gotten so much better. And talking about it is part of the cure for me,
Yeah.
because it's part of the helping process. If someone comes up to me, which happens quite often nowadays, and said, I saw your post on LinkedIn or something like that, thank you. Like, that's overwhelming gratitude on my part, because it makes it so worth it to be outspoken about these things and not be afraid to talk about some of the more sensitive topics, or admit failure, which is, you know, I'm not doing that, but I was close, right? I lost it all, to the point where thankfully I had enough to turn it around, and then the courage to accommodate that, which is what was needed most.
Exactly. So, like, setbacks, it do not announce themselves, and they just sneak in, right? So, what do you think? I mean, according to you, how does someone stay anchored when fear or maybe uncertainty resurfaces?
I mean, my methodology that I've put into practice is And I hate to make it sound easier said than done. It's not, but turning some of the chaos into clarity. I just did that, like I said, with my most recent, I was diagnosed with stage 3 prostate cancer on September 9th. I was shocked because I had no symptoms. I feel great. I always felt great. That's typically a chaotic moment. That's a big
Mhm.
ouch. That's a big wow, whatever, call it what you will. And it was. But, it's almost the appropriate time to do that, take that walk around the block or take a deep breath or let's process this before we overreact, if you will. And that's what I chose to do. I chose to dive into what my diagnosis was, what my options for treatment were, becoming essentially a student of it. And most people do when they want to know what their situation is, but having those conversations with people that were not doctors that have been through it, opening up, I was able to, turn that, very scary situation into a very positive situation. It was still scary, so I had to face the fact that I had to have a pretty major surgery soon, which I've had since, and I'm healed and I'm grateful and amen to that. But at the time, it was a lot to process. And, taking that step back, taking that walk around the block, if you will, that to figure out, okay, well, what's the best way to handle this situation? And, there's good ways and there's bad ways. And you have to get the feedback from the resources you have available to you and make the best decisions. And then it combines the combination of that with the decision-making process provides a feeling of security that you've done your homework, you've made the right decision. And with
Mhm.
me, that's what it did. I made the decision to have surgery and I never looked back because I made the right decision based on all like fact finding. And then I had my own comfort level and now here we are. But turning that moment into a learning option is, even if we look at some of the past challenges that we faced, if we would have put that into practice, it would have allowed us to make better decisions, I think. So I was able to do that. And that's what I encourage everybody to do, is to turn that chaos into clarity. Whatever it is in your life that's causing you anxiety or just unrest, think about it, talk about it, Google it, whatever, get yourself more educated on the topic and understand that there might be creative ways to deal with it or better ways to handle it or someone to reach out to speak to about it. That has been hugely beneficial to me in my approach.
I understand. Totally understand. And also, like for anyone who is listening who feels overwhelmed or quietly struggling, then what would you want them to hear right now?
Well, I would want them to hear that they also have the ability to give themselves the same pat on the back that I did that night, that grace in the mirror, and that they are, no matter what they're going through, they are, God's people and put here for a reason. And for that reason alone, they are amazing. And that doesn't minimize the struggle that they might be going through. So allowing themselves some of that grace that I speak of, taking that next step to getting better, whether it's a walk outside or a call to a loved one or a visit to the doctor or a virtual recovery room or whatever it may be that's going to allow you to start the process and not delay it any longer, is what I would recommend. And that's what I did. It's putting that proverbial stake in the ground and saying, today's the day and let's go. I did that, 56 days ago, and I've never looked back. Been the best decision of my life by far because it allowed me direction. It showed me where, not only what was the right thing to do, but it pointed me in the right direction of what was the right thing to do for me, instead of, maybe it wasn't working as a sales executive in cybersecurity anymore. Maybe it was becoming a therapist and helping others that are battling addiction. I had no idea, but it pointed me in that direction. And I'm ever since that day have been so grateful because now I have a purpose. It's amazing. Really is.
Amazing. And where can listeners find you if they want to know more about you, want to connect separately, how they can connect?
Yeah. So my website is ironmindadvisors.com.
Hmm.
My email address is ken@ironmindadvisors.com. I love hearing from people that listen. I don't like hearing from them, meaning like they enjoyed the episode, things like that. That makes it all worth it. So my website is a spot where I put up content on a regular basis. It talks about my story, which is, there's more components to it, but I try to do a good job of portraying it on my website. And then via my website are all my, social media accounts and whatnot. But ironmindadvisors.com or ken at ironmindadvisors.com is the best place to reach me. And thank you for allowing me to do that.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, what I'll do is I'll put all the links and the details into the show notes for your easy reference. And with this hope, thank you so much for spending time with us on Mind Meets Machine. And if today's conversation has resonated with you, then take a moment to reflect on where strength in your life, like, might be asking to be redefined, right? So, until next time, with this hope, this is the host Avik, and this is Mind Meets Machine. This is Mind Meets Machine, and stay curious, stay grounded, and remember that clarity often begins when we stop resisting the pause. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.